All came at 6:42 in the morning. I know the exact time because I'd been awake since 5. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, going over a budget spreadsheet for a client presentation I had at 9, my phone lit up, and for a split second I felt that small, stupid flicker of hope, the way you always do when your family calls early. Like maybe this time it'll just be someone saying good morning. It was my brother. "Mom fell," he said. "They took her to St. Luke's. They think it might be her heart." I was out the door in 11 minutes. Here's what you need to understand about my family before any of this makes sense. I am the oldest of 3. My brother Luca is 4 years younger than me. My sister Bree is 7 years younger. I'm 31. I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized consulting firm in Columbus, Ohio. I make decent money, not rich, but stable. The kind of stable that took me years of student loan payments and skipped vacations to build. My dad passed when I was 22, during my last year of college. After that, I became whatever my family needed me to be. I don't say that with resentment. At least I didn't for a long time. When your dad dies and your mom doesn't know how to pay a bill online, you step up. When your brother is 19 and spiraling, you drive 4 hours to sit with him. When your sister needs someone to co-sign an apartment lease because she just turned 18 and has no credit, you do it. You do it because you love them. You do it because you are the oldest. You do it because somewhere along the way you convinced yourself that being needed was the same thing as being loved. My mom's name is Darlene. She's 63, a retired school secretary, and she has the particular talent of making every problem feel like it is somehow your fault for not having prevented it sooner. I say this not to be cruel, but because it matters for what comes later. Bree is 24. She got engaged 8 months ago to a guy named Drew, and the moment that ring went on her finger, something shifted in our household that I still don't entirely know how to describe. It was like Bree had been handed a permission slip to ask for things she'd never have asked for before, to expect things she had no business expecting, and to frame every no as an act of cruelty. The engagement party alone cost $2,000. I paid for half. The bridal shower deposits, $400. I covered it. The venue tours. Bree and my mom flew to Nashville for a long weekend to look at 3 different event spaces for a destination wedding experience, which was a phrase I had never heard before and immediately hated. That trip was $2,800. My mom called me from the Nashville airport to ask if I could Venmo her before she had to swipe her card for luggage fees. I did it. I always did it. What I didn't do, what I kept failing to do, was say the word that would have stopped all of it before it started. I know that. I'm not asking anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm telling you what happened because I think a lot of you know exactly what this feels like, and nobody ever says it out loud, that the first time you can't say no to your family, it's hard. The 10th time, it's reflex. By the 50th time, you don't even remember what your own boundaries used to look like. I got to the hospital at 7:20. My mom was stable. That word, which I would come to understand, means not actively dying right now and resting in a room in the cardiac unit. She'd had a minor episode, possibly stress-related, possibly the beginning of something they wanted to monitor. They were running tests. A cardiologist would be in by 10. Luca was already there. He looked like he hadn't slept, which was probably true. We sat in the waiting area with bad coffee and said the kinds of things families say in those moments. She looked okay. She was talking when the paramedics came. She asked about her plants. Bree arrived at 8:15. She came in loud the way she always does. Big entrance, big hug for Mom, big tears that dried up pretty fast. Drew was with her, standing slightly to one side, checking his phone. For a while it was fine. Uncomfortable the way hospitals always are, but fine. We took turns going in to see Mom. The cardiologist came and went. The verdict was a mild arrhythmia, likely exacerbated by stress and poor sleep. She wasn't being discharged today. Possibly tomorrow, possibly the day after, depending on how she responded to medication. I called my office and rescheduled my morning. Then I called and rescheduled my afternoon. I sat in the family lounge with a notepad and started writing down questions for the doctor, the same way I used to write questions before our dad's appointments, because someone had to, and it was always going to be me. It was around noon when Bree pulled me into the hallway. "So I need to talk to you about something," she said. I waited. "Drew and I have that thing this weekend, the Asheville trip." For a moment, I genuinely didn't know what she was referring to. Then it came back to me. She'd mentioned it a few weeks ago, in passing. A 4-day trip to Asheville with Drew's family. Some kind of pre-wedding bonding thing his mom had organized. Hiking, wine tasting, a spa day. "Okay," I said. "We leave Friday." It was Tuesday. "Bree," I said, "Mom just had a cardiac event. They said she's stable. They said she needs to be monitored for a few days." "You'll be here," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even really a statement. It was just a fact she had decided was true, and she was letting me know. I looked at her for a moment. I thought about saying it. I thought about explaining that I had used all my PTO for a family emergency last year, that I had a major deliverable due Friday, that I hadn't eaten since 6 in the morning, that I was tired, not just today, but the kind of tired that collects over years. "I'll figure it out," I said. Her shoulders dropped with relief. "Thank you, I knew you would. You're the best." She went back into my mom's room. I stood in the hallway for another minute before following. My mom went home on Thursday afternoon. She wasn't fully cleared. She had a follow-up scheduled for Monday, new medications to manage, dietary restrictions, a list of warning signs to watch for. The cardiologist was clear. No stress, no overexertion. Someone should be checking in on her regularly. Bree left for Asheville on Friday morning. My mom, to her credit, did not ask Bree to stay. What she did instead was call me Thursday night and mention, very casually, that she'd been thinking about the wedding venue deposit, which was due in 3 weeks, and that she and Bree had found a place they both really loved, and that the deposit was $8,000. I said I'd have to think about it. "Bree is so excited," my mom said. "She's really counting on this." I didn't sleep well that night. I went over to my mom's house Friday afternoon after work. I brought groceries, made dinner, got her prescription sorted into the weekly pill organizer. She seemed okay, tired but okay. We watched a home renovation show she liked, and I drove home around 9. I woke up at 2 in the morning with chest tightness that I told myself was stress. By 3 it hadn't gone away. By 4 I was sweating through my shirt and my left arm felt strange. Not painful exactly, just wrong. I called 911 at 4:17. I don't remember the ambulance. I remember a woman's voice, calm and even, telling me to stay still. I remember lights. I remember being cold. I was 31 years old, and I was having a heart attack. Not a minor episode, not a stress reaction, a full myocardial infarction caused by a blockage that my doctors would later tell me had probably been developing for months. The kind of thing that builds quietly while you're busy not taking care of yourself, not sleeping, not eating right, running on adrenaline and obligation, and the fear of letting everyone down. I spent the next 4 days in the ICU. My mom found out Saturday morning. She called me, and when I didn't answer, she called Luca, who had been notified by the hospital as my emergency contact. He drove to her house to tell her in person. I know all of this because Luca told me later. He was there within 2 hours of me being admitted. He slept in the family lounge the first night. He brought my phone charger and a book and sat with me when I drifted in and out of consciousness, and he did not once make me feel like I was an inconvenience. My mom came Saturday afternoon. She stayed for about 90 minutes, cried a lot, told me I needed to slow down, and said she'd been telling me for years that I worked too hard. She asked if I'd remember to water her plants before the ambulance came. I had not. She did not come back Sunday. She didn't come Monday either. I didn't think much of it at first. She wasn't well herself, and the drive to the hospital was 30 minutes, and I told myself she was resting, following doctor's orders, being careful with her own heart. On Tuesday, Luca came to visit, and I asked him how Mom was doing. He got a look on his face that I had never seen on him before, something careful and uncomfortable, like he was deciding how much to say. "She's fine," he said. "She went to Asheville." The room was quiet for a moment. She went to Asheville, I repeated. Bree called her Sunday night. Drew's mom offered to cover her flight and hotel, and he stopped. She didn't want Bree to be alone with his family. She thought it would be awkward. I stared at the ceiling. You were stable, he said. Like that explained it. Like that was the thing that made it okay. They said you were stable. I didn't say anything for a long time. You're the only one who came, I finally said. He looked down at his hands. Yeah. There's something that happens to you when you're lying in a hospital bed with monitors attached to your chest and you have nothing to do but think. You start doing the accounting, not the financial kind, though God knows I had that version too, but the other kind, the kind where you add up everything you've given and everything you've gotten back, and you look at the number at the bottom, and you sit with what it means. I had given my family, conservatively, somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 over the past 9 years. This is not an exaggeration. I have spreadsheets. I am a financial analyst. Of course I have spreadsheets. Student loan payments for Luca's first 2 years of community college. First and last month's rent for Bree's apartment. The engagement party, the bridal shower, the Nashville trip. Countless smaller things. Car repairs, utility bills. The time my mom's furnace died in February, and I put $4,000 on my credit card without being asked. I had also given them 9 years of availability, canceled trips, missed work events, rescheduled everything around their emergencies, their celebrations, their needs. And when I was in the ICU, when my heart had actually stopped working properly, my mother flew to Asheville for a spa weekend. I lay there in that hospital bed and I thought, when did I stop being a person to them and become a resource? I was discharged on a Wednesday. Luca picked me up. He'd cleaned my apartment while I was in the hospital. Dishes done, laundry folded, fridge stocked with things I could actually eat. He didn't make a big deal of it. He just did it. On the drive home, he told me carefully that Mom and Bree were coming home Thursday, that they wanted to come see me. I said okay. What I didn't say was that something had changed while I was lying in that hospital room. Some mechanism inside me, some hinge I had spent years carefully, obsessively oiling, had gone still. Not broken, just quiet. My mom came Thursday evening. She brought flowers, the grocery store kind, and a card that said, "Thinking of you," in silver script. She hugged me for a long time and said she'd been so scared and that she was so glad I was okay. I didn't say much. I made tea. I sat on the couch across from her. The trip was beautiful, she said after a while. The mountains this time of year. I know, I said. I've seen photos. A pause. Bree really needed me there, sweetheart. Drew's family. Mom, I said. I was in the ICU. You were stable. There it was again. That word. Like stable was a destination. Like once you crossed into stable, you didn't need people anymore. Like the whole reason a person wants their mother when they're sick has nothing to do with fear or loneliness, and everything to do with whether the monitors are beeping at a reassuring rate. I know I was stable, I said. I know, but I was 31 years old and my heart stopped and I woke up alone. She started to cry. I had expected that. I had also decided, somewhere in the gray quiet of the ICU, that her tears were not going to move me this time. Not because I didn't love her, but because I had finally understood something. Her tears had always been about her guilt, her discomfort, her need to be forgiven quickly so we could move on. They had never really been about me. I love you, I said, and I'm done. She blinked. Done with what? All of it. The money, the being available for everything, the rearranging my whole life for things that are not emergencies. I'm done. Bree came 2 days later without calling first. She knocked. I opened the door, and the first thing she said was, "You look terrible." "Heart attack," I said. "We'll do that." She sat at my kitchen table, and within 4 minutes she had pivoted to the venue deposit. $8,000, due in 2 weeks. She'd been counting on my help, she said. She knew it was a lot, she said, but she and Drew had already told the venue, and if they lost the deposit... No, I said. She stopped mid-sentence. I'm not paying the deposit, I said. I'm not paying for the wedding. I love you, but I was in the hospital and you went to a spa. I don't have anything left. She shook her head. You're making this about the hospital. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You were stable, everyone said. I was scared, I said, and my voice didn't shake, which surprised me. I was in the ICU and I was scared and I wanted my family, and you were wine tasting, and that's the truth, and no amount of talking about how stable I was changes that. She left angry. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after she was gone, waiting to feel guilty. I waited a while. The guilt didn't come. Here is the part of the story I haven't told yet. On my third day in the ICU, Luca had gone home to shower and sleep, and I was alone in that quiet, beeping room in the middle of the afternoon. A nurse came in to check my vitals, and we got to talking the way you do when you've run out of ways to distract yourself. She asked if I had family in the area. I told her my brother had been there. She nodded, checked the chart, said something about the visitor log being updated for any overnight guests. I asked idly if she could tell me who had been marked as visitors. She looked at the screen for a moment. Luca, listed here as your emergency contact. And she paused. There's also an individual who checked in at the front desk 3 times, not listed as family. He asked the nurse's station about your condition, but was told he wasn't on the authorized visitor list. She tilted her head. He left a note. I didn't know what to say. Who was it? She checked. Name here is Raymond Calloway. I felt something cold move through me. My father's name was Douglas. My parents had been married for 22 years. I had no uncle named Raymond. I had no family friends by that name, no co-workers, no one. But I knew that name. I knew it because there was a man named Raymond Calloway who had coached girls' soccer in my town from the time I was 5 until I was 12, and who had moved away abruptly when I was in middle school, and whose name had appeared once in an argument I had overheard through my parents' bedroom door when I was 9 years old. My mother's voice, low and tense, saying, "Please don't do this," saying you can't be a part of this, saying she needs stability. I had been 9. I had not understood what the words meant. I was 31, lying in the ICU, and I was beginning to. I asked my mom about Raymond Calloway the following week. I want to be precise about how I did this, because it matters. I did not ambush her. I did not confront her. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon, and I said quietly that a man had come to the hospital 3 times while I was in the ICU, and that his name was Raymond Calloway, and that I remembered that name, and that I needed her to tell me the truth. The silence on the phone lasted a long time. How did you? She stopped, started again. Who told you? It was in the visitor log, I said. He left a note. I haven't read it yet. Another silence. He's your father, she said finally. Her voice was very flat. Biologically, your father, Douglas. He knew. We told him before we got married. He chose to raise you. We agreed Raymond would stay away. I sat with that for a moment. Did Raymond agree to that? She paused. He agreed to the terms, but he always kept track of you. I don't know how. Birthday cards to the school sometimes before we asked them to stop forwarding things. A friend of his lived in the neighborhood for a while. I think he found out about the hospital I don't know how he found out. He came 3 times, I said. I know. You knew he came? Another pause. Longer this time. Luca mentioned it. After. I closed my eyes. She had known. She had known this man, my biological father, had come to see me in the ICU, had sat in a hospital lobby 3 times asking about a daughter he'd spent 31 years watching from a distance, and she had said nothing, had come with grocery store flowers and told me about the mountains of Asheville. I have to go, I told her. Sweetheart. I'll call you later, I said. I just need a minute. The note was in an envelope the nurse's station had held for me. I picked it up on discharge but hadn't opened it. It had been sitting on my kitchen counter for a week. I opened it on a Thursday morning, standing in my kitchen with coffee, sunlight coming through the window. His handwriting was careful and a little formal. He said he had heard I was unwell and that he was sorry, that he hoped I was recovering. He said he understood completely if I had no interest in any contact, and that he would not reach out again unless I wanted him to. He left a phone number and an email address. He said, I have thought about you every single day of your life. I am so sorry for every year I wasn't there. I need you to know that it was never because you weren't wanted. I stood in my kitchen and cried in a way I hadn't cried in years. Not the controlled, careful kind, but the kind that comes from somewhere you didn't know was still open. I thought about a man sitting in a hospital waiting room 3 times, asking about a daughter he wasn't allowed to see. I thought about birthday cards sent to a school office and quietly intercepted. I thought about 31 years of distance maintained not by indifference but by an agreement he had no real power to break. I thought about my mother flying to Asheville. I thought about the $40-something thousand and the canceled plans and the years of being everything for everyone. And I thought about how none of it had ever quite felt like enough. And I wondered if some part of me had always been trying to earn a love I thought I had to deserve. I called the number on a Friday afternoon. He answered on the second ring. "This is Nora," I said. "I think you know who I am." The silence lasted about 2 seconds. Then he said, in a voice that sounded like someone trying very hard to stay steady, "I know exactly who you are." We talked for almost 2 hours. I'm not going to tell you it was simple. It wasn't. There's no version of a 31-year gap that ties up cleanly. There are things I'm still angry about. Things that don't have easy explanations. Complicated feelings I am still sorting through with a therapist I finally started seeing last month. But I will tell you this. He knew my birthday without being told. He knew what college I'd gone to. He knew I'd been on the debate team in high school because a friend of his had a daughter in the same school district. He had built a quiet, incomplete picture of my life from whatever small pieces found their way to him, and he had kept every one of them. "Were you ever going to reach out?" I asked, "before this?" "Every year," he said. "Every year I told myself you'd probably want nothing to do with me, that you had a life and a father and I'd only complicate things." He paused. "And then I heard you were in the hospital and I thought, I can't let her be alone in there and never have tried." I didn't say anything for a moment. "I was alone in there," I said. "My family was in Asheville." I heard something in the silence after that, not quite shock, something quieter. "Tell me about yourself," he said finally. "Tell me whatever you want to." So I did. It has been 5 months since I was discharged from St. Luke's. I am recovered, fully, the cardiologist says, with some lifestyle adjustments and a medication I'll likely take for a few years. I exercise now, actually exercise, not the frantic kind, but the deliberate kind. I sleep 8 hours. I declined to pay for the wedding venue, and Bree found a smaller place that she and Drew are paying for themselves. And the wedding is in April, and I am not in the bridal party, and I have made my peace with all of that. I have spoken to my mother. We have what I would describe as an honest relationship now, which is to say it is uncomfortable and imperfect, and neither of us pretends anymore. I think that is the closest we are going to get. Luca and I have lunch every other Sunday. Raymond and I have spoken 11 times. We met for coffee last month, in a neutral place, a diner halfway between Columbus and where he lives. We sat across from each other, and we were 2 strangers who looked at the same set of hands and the same way of tilting our heads when thinking, and we talked for 3 hours. And he paid the check and walked me to my car, and when we said goodbye, he said, "Thank you for calling me." I said, "Thank you for coming to the hospital." He nodded. "I'll always come," he said. I drove home, and I sat in my car in the parking garage for a while, not crying, just sitting. For 31 years I had been the person who held everything together for everyone else, and I had never once thought to ask who was holding things together for me. Now I know. I used to think that love and obligation were the same thing. For most of my 20s I couldn't tell them apart, and honestly, I'm not sure I wanted to. It was easier to keep moving, keep covering, keep saying yes, than to stop and ask why I was so afraid of what would happen if I didn't. What I understand now, sitting on the other side of all of it, is that the way things unfolded was not random. Every choice has a weight to it. My mother chose Asheville. Bree chose the spa itinerary and the venue deposit conversation she had with me 3 days after I came home from the hospital. And I had made my own choices too, years of them, choices that quietly taught the people around me what I was worth to them. When you never say no, you don't just exhaust yourself. You accidentally teach people that you don't have limits, that your time, your money, your presence in a crisis are simply available on demand, like a utility. I don't say that to assign blame to myself. I say it because I think it's true, and because pretending it isn't wouldn't help anyone. Raymond came to that hospital 3 times without being invited, without being asked, without any expectation that I would ever know. He sat in a waiting room and asked about a daughter he wasn't allowed to see, and when they told him he wasn't on the list, he came back the next night anyway. That is not obligation. That is not habit or guilt or social performance. That is something a person does when they have decided, quietly and completely, that someone else's life matters to them. There is a word for that, and the word is decency, the plain, unglamorous kind that doesn't announce itself. And then there is what I had to find in myself after. The part that was harder than the hospital, harder than the conversation with my mother, harder than watching Bree's face when I said no for the first time. That part was learning to think clearly about my own life. Really think, not just react. To look at the spreadsheet of what I had given and what had come back, and have the honesty to read it for what it was. Intelligence isn't just about being good at your job or knowing the right answers. Sometimes it's about having the clarity to look at your own patterns and say, this is not working and I am the only one who can change it. The hardest part was the last part, staying steady. Not going back when my mom called and cried. Not writing a check for the venue deposit just to make the tension stop. Not slipping back into the version of myself that confused being needed with being loved. That took something I had to build from scratch, a kind of quiet stubbornness, a refusal to betray the person I was trying to become, just because it would have been easier not to change. Luca came to the hospital because he wanted to. Raymond came because 31 years of distance hadn't changed what he felt. Those 2 things, more than anything else, showed me what I had been missing. Not money, not grand gestures, but people who showed up without being asked, without an invoice attached. I still think about that note, the careful handwriting, the phone number, the line that said, I have thought about you every single day of your life. Some things find you when you finally stop running fast enough to outpace them.